Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, coming to you as always from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Marcatelli, and joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Garrett K. Jones. Garrett, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, John. How you doing?
I am doing good, trying to stay dry. As I guess you are out there in California. It is a wet all over the United States, wet and cold in some places. So,
I was working at a school site on Friday, and we had so much rainfall that like everything was puddles, but the school site had no covered walkways because the architect was a moron. And so by the time I got from the admin office halfway across campus to the classroom where I was supposed to be, my feet were just I made the mistake of wearing the wrong shoes. They weren't waterproof, and at least my right foot was a bit soggy.
Oh, I work as many of you know, little off thing. I work as a bus driver for a paratransit bus service, and let me tell you, if you step in a puddle and then you got your feet soggy and you're having to drive around with nothing's worse than wet socks.
Yeah,
nothing. But now we got some. The rivers are definitely over their banks here.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, got a little bit of flooding in some areas. So stay safe, everybody, if you're in areas that have been impacted by any bad storms. So yeah.
Yes.
But we're here to talk Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 10.
Yeah. This I actually really like this, and I
did too.
And I want to hear your thoughts on it first, because last week I did a ton of talking. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, when I first saw it and when I was first kind of getting into it, my initial reaction is, great, another filler episode. But then as I started to go into it, I'm like, okay, this makes sense, because I'm glad that they didn't just snap their finger and Sid came in and like, well, it's a good thing Sid came in and rescued us from there and got us out of there, and they're just back. I'm glad that they're showing like, okay, they're looking for the ship. They're going through this, instead of just, like I said, just snapping their finger, they snap their fingers and they're back on Ord Mantell. I'm glad that we're actually showing them trying to get off the planet. And really, I think this was the first time in a while where we're seeing the Bad Batch do what they do.
Yeah.
As far as helping people and moving closer towards that. Because I don't think so far they haven't gone full rebel. Like, they haven't totally declared that they're kind of doing their own thing, and they're trying to stay under the radar of their empire, trying not to, they'll do things here and there to help, steal something, but they haven't declared that, okay, we're going against the empire, we're rebelling against the empire. They've almost taken the attitude of what Luke had in A New Hope, where he said, sure, I hate the empire, but I mean, what can we do about it? I think that's kind of where the Bad Batch are. They're like, yeah, we don't like them, but nothing we can really do about it. We just got to survive and take what we can.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you on that. Like you mentioned that you thought it was going to be another filler episode, and I was actually gladly surprised that it wasn't.
Yeah,
that it picked up from the previous episode, and we're carried into this, because they're doing it now, kind of like what the Clone Wars used to do, where they do like 2 or 3 like linked episodes, and then they move on to another thing. And so we're seeing that there's kind of a trend with 2 episode, connections, like what we saw with the Wookiees, or what we saw with what was happening with the cover up of Camino, and the disillusion of the clone forces. But the thing I really appreciate about this is that things don't just get fixed out of the blue, and we're seeing more. We're actually seeing that what they're encountering are little pockets of people needing help. Yes. And it feels like the Bad Batch is starting to find its place, that they're not just mercs for hire working for a boss. They are seeing a larger scale of people that need their help when they're on these missions. And so I think by the end of this season, and I could be wrong in my prediction, but it feels like we're going to see them make a decision to really start trying to make a difference.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that's going to be where the split with Sid happens, where Sid has a mission that's going to have them do something that's going to put people in danger. And Sid and they won't do it because, it might be something where it's an imperial agent is hired her to get something done, or someone associated with that, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's how the split will happen, if the split happens.
I think we may see a split, and I think you may be right. If the writers are worth their salt, they'll do something like that where they will force the split, an ideological split, even though it seems to be a lucrative thing for them. I think that would probably be one of the best things to happen in the show. However, I think it would be very poor writing if all of a sudden we find out that Sid is actually working with the rebels all along.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I feel like the random selection of going to that mine in the previous episode and getting themselves trapped on the planet and having to harvest that energy source ore. It feels like that's one of those. It's one of those things that could go in that direction, and I feel like that would be really weak writing. That's like, oh yeah, she's a really good person.
Yeah, I think it would be, and you don't even have to make her to be fully evil. You can just have her be the Empire. Have the attitude of the Empire paid more.
Or maybe she's working for someone that she doesn't even realize is part of the Empire.
Yeah,
she's just taking a job because it pays well. And come to find out, that's the direction that it went.
Yeah.
And like I said, I would love to lean more towards that side because that would make the story far more engaging than just, she's working for the rebels or connected to the rebels, and everything that she's been doing is really for good.
Yeah. And I don't think, like I said, I don't even think you have to have her be like she's necessarily doing everything because she's a evil person. She can just have her be, she's a businesswoman.
Yeah, she's doing it for the money.
She does it for the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing personal. It's just the credits.
I did like one of the things I did like about this episode is once they get in, once they infiltrate, I mean, there's kind of a Mission Impossible vibe to it, because when spoiler alert, they go inside this other mining system on the planet, and they rappel down an exhaust port.
Yes,
it feels very, very similar to some other things that we have seen, especially going back to Mission Impossible, some of the stunts that Tom Cruise has done.
Yeah,
and what's really cool about that is, I mean, they time it just right. It starts to get dangerous, doesn't get as dangerous as it really could have been, because they're able to get through it in time. But I like the direction that it goes. There's a sense of consequence to the episode, that if one wrong move gets someone killed, or one wrong move gets them all killed. And I like that.
Yeah, I definitely got vibe. I didn't get until you just mentioned it, but yeah, now that I think about it, definitely get Mission Impossible vibes. I got Goonie vibes, and I also got Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I definitely a Temple of Doom thing going on.
Yeah, especially with the walkway and the kids and the using the slave, basically slave labor. It was interesting how it was basically slave labor, but they were basically wage slaves.
Yeah.
And you see the same thing in Andor, where with the prison, where they kept the prisoners in this constant loop of, if you just do a little bit harder, you can get a little bit more of a reward. And there's
really no reward.
There's no reward. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of carrot, but mostly stick.
Yeah. It's like, you get food, indoors. You get food with flavor. Ooh.
Food with flavor. Oh my God. I don't even want to know what food without flavor tastes like. If I want to do that, I think I'll go to Russia.
I was gonna say British food, but no, actually like British food. Nothing like nothing better than a good full English breakfast. Let me tell you.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of black pudding.
Oh, fair enough.
It's kind of gross. I mean, it's blood sausage. It is what it is. So, was there something about the show, about this episode in particular, that maybe stood out to you that you didn't care for?
I'm thinking. I don't know. Maybe. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. Maybe I will. Like, what about you? Is there anything that you?
I was frustrated with the fact that. Now, I don't mind the fact that it came from Omega, because she's a smart character. We've already seen from the very beginning that she's intuitive. She's very intelligent. What I have a problem with is the fact that of all the members of the Bad Batch, the one character who should have thought about tracing the Gonk droid signal should have been Tech. He should have been the guy to be like, hey, you know what? We can't track the transponder's been deactivated, but we can certainly track our droid because he's producing a signal that the thief probably doesn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been the first to come up with that idea. But I understand why they didn't, because they're wanting to treat it as kind of a 2-part episode arc, where you have the dilemma during the first episode, you have the resolution in the second. But it's one of those things where it should have been introduced by Tech towards the end of episode 9, but they were having difficulty tracing the signal because of the ray shielding.
Yeah.
But then,
I can see that. I can see
getting
that.
around that.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been more fulfilling for me. The fact that out of the blue, Tech doesn't even think about this when he's by far probably one of the smartest members on the team, and it's the little teenage girl that figures out how to do the one thing that he should have known to do. Now,
would you have been fine if there would have been a small scene afterwards where Omega mentioned something about that, like, not in like a negative way, but like, to Tech, and Tech says something like, yes, I figured that out a while ago, but I wanted to see if you could figure that out.
That would have been fine. I would have been okay with that had there been some other decision made earlier in episode 9 or at the beginning of episode 10 that gave us this indication that Tech was going to try and teach her something.
Yeah,
we don't get that sense. There's no teachable moment between Tech and Omega other than him learning to embrace his emotions just a little bit more. That's all we get. This very technological solution should have been something he thought of immediately, because that's part of his job.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of the villain, the bad guy in this one?
I liked him. There was kind of a I got a lot of Oliver coming through this. Charles Dickens.
Yes, Charles. Yes,
very much like Fagin, in that you have all these characters, and they go by some very like normal names, considering Star Wars. Like, what was the kid's name? Jack.
Yeah,
or something like that. And it's like that's a really normal sounding name for Star Wars, but like you've got these kids who've grown up and this is all they know. They've been probably mining since they were able to walk and talk, or they saw their families do it before. And who knows? They could have been like kidnapped as kids. We don't know, but like there's definitely a Fagin vibe coming from the villain in this, because he's basically using these kids to do all the labor. And then when you see the fact that he is literally eating the spoils of their hard labor, all the things that are coming in, he's he is gorging himself on food that he could easily be sharing with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, like, I'm glad, like, I kind of wish it had been like it had been one of the older kids that had, like, turned on him. Like, they started throwing rocks or something, or, they are the ones who pushed him off the bridge. That would have been a better fit than him, trying to toss Omega over and all that. But it was a really, really well done villain. I think as an antagonist, he's there's something really cool about it. Like, you get this. I mean, even for just a one-off, you get the sense that this is someone who he's a complete narcissist. He thinks only about himself. He is manipulative. He's lying. And he's one of those one-off villains that the Batch is seeing being kind of a hallmark indicator of the kinds of things they need to be fighting.
Yeah.
Because these are things that are holdovers from the war. You had people profiteering from the wars. And while they may have not been able to engage in those things, now they're able to do that. And they're able to be if not a pocket of resistance against the Empire, they're able to be a pocket of resistance going around righting wrongs. They're kind of like Robin Hood and the Merry Men to some extent.
Yeah.
Because, again, not to mix metaphors, but this is, again, a very, very much Robin Hood scenario where these kids are under the thumb of a despot, even a minor one, and Hunter and the gang come in and just
I was glad when the kid brought the proof that he was skimming off the top, and that was lying to him about the mineral and how the mineral was actually not degrading. That it was the older kid who had gotten the benefit of because they had that scene where it's like, okay, who made the most money, and it was that kid, and that the older boy. And the other kid had mentioned how he always gets it, that he was the one who said, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right. Because he could have easily said, hey, I'm still getting benefit from it, so I'll keep quiet. I'm glad that he was the one that, kind of, because he looked like he was probably kind of somewhat of a leader among the boys, among those kids. So the fact that he was the one that, like, looked up and said, hey, wait a minute, we've been busting our butts for you, and you've been lying to us this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that sense of fair play is there, because despite the competitive nature of what these kids were doing, they still, they were still looking out for each other, because they're all in survival mode. And they knew that without the others, they wouldn't be able to survive, or at least that's the mindset that they had gotten themselves into. And so, as competitive as it was, when they're shown proof that things aren't as they've been told, that sense of right and wrong kicks in, and you have characters who are they're banding together to to do what's right.
Yeah. Now, what did you think about? I mean, you kind of knew that that they weren't going to leave the planet. Like, no one was going to leave the planet. But did you think that was a good thing, where a storytelling choice where Omega makes the kind of makes the plea, like, hey, basically in a roundabout way saying, hey, you could come with us.
Well, there's
a
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's kind of a logistics to it, because the Marauder can only hold so many people.
Yeah.
And I think with the number of kids that there was way more than they would be able to hold in their ship. On top of that, what are these kids going to do at any other point in their life? I mean, sure, they could probably go to some other planet, but the only thing they've ever known how to do is mine for this mineral. And while they could probably, place those skills to another outer rim planet that has mining operations, it's not going to be the same. They're going to find themselves in a similar situation. Now they can control what they mine, when they mine, how they're divvying up the spoils of that, they're going to find themselves in a far more lucrative state than they were before.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So as dangerous as the mineral is, they know how to navigate and how to mine it safely without causing it to, explode or do whatever.
So overall, what would you give grade wise the episode, a score?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it about an 8.
Okay, that's fair.
Or letter grade B minus. It was a good episode. I'd still like to see. I mean, the action set pieces were fantastic. That was knocking it out of the ballpark. And I think that's one of the things that the writers of this series have been doing well with season 2. The action is good. And this particular episode solidified for me the overarching theme of what's happening this season. And while some of the episodes were standalone, some of the episodes have been these 2 episode arcs that right off the bat don't feel connected. What we're getting is this. We are getting the sense that the Batch is now finally opening their eyes to the larger problem going around. That while the Empire is bad, there are other people who need help from other things that were caused by the war. And because like these kids, I mean, their families were killed because of the war. These mines were abandoned because of the war. And it was a war that Hunter and Tech and Wrecker and Echo and all of them have, well, with the exception of Omega because she didn't really do any fighting, but it's a fight that they were engaged with, and so now they're having, and they're finding themselves in a new battle.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the same. I give it a good solid 8. Just like I mean, pretty much everything you said. Just kind of moving the story along and getting to know, getting the Bad Batch to. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. My mind went blank.
Well, it doesn't feel like one of those episodes where it's getting them from point A to point B. Like a lot of these episodes have been. Some of them it's been like, okay, well, how can we get these characters from here to here story-wise and just move them into position for whatever's going to come next. That works if you're not really careful with the writing and because to some degree, like parts of Rogue One feel like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rogue One is a very well written, very well paced movie, but a lot of it is just putting pieces on the board and just moving them to where they need to be so that the story makes sense for the movie that's already in existence. In this case, it just felt like they're moving the pieces around the board just to get to the next episode. At least that's how it felt. This episode, for me, like I said, does away with that and solidifies what we're seeing as this overarching theme. And I think that's why this episode stands out a little bit better than last week's, or even some of the earlier ones from the season where it just felt like a standalone or felt like there was really no point to the episode.
Excuse me. Sorry.
I'll quit doing that now. So for those of you who are listening to the podcast right now, so there's a 2-hour disparity between myself and John, and John's he's in the Midwest and he's 2 hours ahead of me. So right now it's about 7:15 California time. That means it's 9:15 his time, and he keeps yawning, and I'm like, I'm tired. So he's tired. I'm tired. He yawns. I want to yawn.
Oh, yeah. It's good to know that yawns are still contagious, even over probably 1,000 miles of distance.
Yes.
Over the TV, over the computer screen. Yes. Oh, wow. Well, on that note, Garrett, why don't you tell the fine folks out there where they can find you at?
Yes. Okay. Well, you
other
guys,
than California.
Yeah, other than California. So you guys can find me at Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing, where I post about my books. I do a series of posts every week on what I'm promoting through my YouTube channel. My YouTube, you can find me at GKJ Publishing on YouTube. You just do that at search, or it's youtube.com/C/GKJ Publishing. On that channel, I do a show called The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. Right now, my creative writing tips are focused on looking at world building through the lens of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a tremendous series that has great world building. This coming up Saturday, March the 4th, March the 4th. I have a great set of book recommendations from a friend of mine who's a local children's author named Clarinet Nolan, and she's talking about revamped classics where it's told from a different perspective. And then March 18th is going to be my 200th episode, where I will be featuring an awesome interview with one of my literary heroes. His name is Jonathan Mayberry. He has done a lot of really cool stuff. In fact, one of his first books ever was a novelization for the 2010 film The Wolfman, starring Benicio del Toro,
cool.
who was in Star Wars Episode 8.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. As for us, you can get a hold of us. First of all, best way to get a hold of us is through our email, warofthestars1@gmail.com. That is also our Twitter handle. Just go to @warofthestars1. You can check us out there, or on Facebook and Instagram. Just search War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. We are, of course, part of the Red 5 Network. Go to red5network.com for all information on all our shows. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars. And of course, our Spreadshirt shop. Get the cool merch we have there. We are on all of the major platforms for podcast: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio. I believe we're on Radio Public, and I know for sure we are on Spotify. So check us out there on Spotify. And pretty much wherever podcasts are heard, just go to your local podcast thing and just type in War of the Stars and you'll find us there.
Yep.
I believe that is about it. So with that being said, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
This is the way.